Today I'll be sharing my first impressions of a camera that many would love to hate and many too would love to love. Nope, it's not this camera, but it's this camera. So, the first thing that you would notice the instant you touch this camera is just how good the build quality really feels. It really feels like a premium and expensive product with its grayish color tone and shark skin-like texture. To me, that's a big plus. In terms of inputs and outputs, this camera has plenty. This camera comes with a 3.5mm mic and headphone jack, mini HDMI, USB Type-C which you can use for charging your camera internally, and it also comes with a jack for the remote. Although I would have to admit that I really wish that they stuck to the same remote that was used in the 5D Mark IV, while they sort of changed it with another one. Another warm welcome is definitely the fully articulating touchscreen. I mean, it is so useful, especially when you're going to get to angles that are really difficult. Now this is a major plus. Now another innovation that Canon made, which I think is really innovative, is definitely the multifunction touch bar. I think it's useful, but at the moment perhaps we're not really getting used to it just yet, simply because there's no tactile feel to it. I've customized mine to actually do some zoom in so I get clear and sharper focus. The good thing is you can customize it to do anything you want it to do. Another good thing that Canon introduced in this model is a shutter that actually protects the sensor. Now how smart is that? Sony, Panasonic, Nikon and the rest, you should really take note on this. It's really something simple, but yet it's really important. Kudos to Canon for doing this. You guys set the standard here. For those who like shooting with 2 memory cards, I'm afraid you won't like this. It only comes with 1 memory card. Fortunately, I don't really shoot with 2 memory cards, but I can understand some that do. Operating this camera is not like a typical DSLR that you can just pick up and go. I guess it does take quite a bit of getting used to, so it's not its strongest point, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad at all. Traditionally on a normal DSLR, to change the modes would just be a matter of rotating the mode dial to the desired mode that you want to shoot in. However, this camera, it is a bit fiddly because you've got to press the mode button first, then only rotate the mode dial. So I feel Canon should have done a better job at making changing modes a bit quicker. It's definitely not a deal breaker for me, but I guess they could have done a better job at it. I find that the LCD screen on the top panel of the camera is quite useful indeed. You can check all the information of your shooting mode and your apertures and your shutters and everything else in there, so I do find it quite useful. What I do miss is definitely having a traditional rotating dial at the back. Now the dial doesn't rotate at all, so I kind of miss the old thing. However, fortunately you can move your focusing point through the back panel while looking through the viewfinder, so that's really useful. I'm really happy that Canon decided to use the LPE6 battery for this camera, because I've got tons of it lying around, so that's really useful. And so far with the battery life, I have no problem shooting almost the whole day long with it. So that's a big thumbs up. I just bought my EOS R with the body alone, so because of that I don't have any RF lenses. But with the new RF lenses, you actually have another multi-function wheel in front of the lens, which allows you to customize your settings, but I can't really show anything about that in this video because I just don't have any RF lenses. So what I've done instead is just adapt my old EF lenses with this camera, and when I bought the camera it came with an RF to EF mount, so yeah, I can use my lenses just like native lenses on this camera, minus the new function wheel option. However, there is an adapter that can actually make you use those function wheels as an adapter. So yeah, I don't have that yet. Oh yeah, another thing that really blew me away was definitely the viewfinder. The viewfinder is probably one of the clearest viewfinders I've ever seen. It feels so natural just looking through the viewfinder and just snapping away. It doesn't have that digital sort of feel as much. Yeah, it's really good. So let's now talk about the video in the EOS R. It does come with C-Log and it's good for color grading. I guess the greatest thing that really brings this camera down is definitely the crop sensor for 4K recording. If only this camera could do full frame in 4K, then it will be just perfect. The full frame 4K inbuilt time-lapse feature is quite nice actually, and it's really full frame even in 4K. The face detection autofocus was generally really good, but I did find that there were times that it did have hiccups. And especially when you're using it in tracking mode, sometimes if you were to tap on tracking, it might just sort of like lose its focus somehow. But generally speaking, the dual pixel autofocus does work quite flawlessly when you get it right. Finally, Canon has decided to put focus peaking and also a manual focusing assist feature, which I really like. So basically, you just twist the lens and this focus point will sort of like line up together and it will go green once something is in focus, and that is really useful, especially when you're using manual lenses. Apparently this feature only existed in the Cinema series cameras, so it's a really good thing that they decided to put it on this EOS R. The EOS R also does come with digital image stabilization, but it's not an optical one, so basically you're gonna get a bit of a crop every time you use it. And well, if you really must use it, it really isn't that bad at all. But I'll definitely avoid trying to use the enhanced mode for the digital image stabilization, simply because that mode is too aggressive and it just crops way too much. So who do I think should really buy this camera? Well, if you ask me personally, being a professional photographer, I think this camera is really good, and it is an upgrade from my 5D Mark IV, in my personal opinion of course. But if you're really out there to look for a camera that can do all, especially in video, I just don't think the EOS R really cuts it. There's a lot of things that it should have come with from the first time they launched it, and it didn't. So personally speaking, I really feel that this camera is for those who really want to use it for photography mainly, and use its video functions more as a secondary thing. So the main question you really got to ask yourself is, if you really want to invest in this camera, is what you're going to really use it for. If you're a YouTuber, I'd say go ahead and buy it, simply because you got a fully articulated screen. Although you don't have full frame 4K, but some people just use HD and that's fine enough. And one thing that's really important to know about this camera is that this is one of those cameras that you just can't judge because of its specs. It's one of those cameras that once you start using it, you really do fall in love with it. It is just so easy to use, and it's a wonderful camera to use, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who wants to use a camera that just works.